I never believed in local legends, at least not until I moved to Ash Creek, Oregon. Folks here talk about the forest the way farmers talk about storms. They don't try to fight it, they just survive around it. There's no mistaking the unease in their eyes when the woods come up in conversation. They say people vanish in there, and sometimes, just sometimes, they come back. But they don't come back whole. Friends, you enjoy listening to stories, but you don't subscribe to the channel or like the videos. I request you to please subscribe to the channel right now so that I get more motivation to bring you even more stories. If you help me reach 1,000 subscribers, I promise to bring you extremely scary stories with a truly real feel, 2 horror stories every single day. So go ahead, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and now let's move on to today's story. The first time I heard the story, I laughed. I was sitting in Jerry's Bar and Grill, the only late-night joint in town, on my 3rd beer after unpacking boxes in my rented cabin. A wiry man with sunken cheeks leaned over from the bar stool beside me and said, "They crawl, no spine. That's what the woods give back." He said it flat, no humor, like he was telling me the price of gas. I smirked, thinking he was drunk. But a woman at the end of the bar crossed herself. A logger at the pool table froze mid-shot and set his cue down. The whole place got quiet. That was the first time I realized these people weren't joking. I should have listened. Ash Creek sits pressed up against the Cascades, swallowed in mist and towering pines. My cabin nudged right against those woods, so close the tree shadows draped across my porch like hungry fingers. At night, the forest wasn't just dark, it was thick. Sound didn't travel right. Owls hooted like they were underwater, and sometimes I swore I heard skin dragging across leaves. The sheriff, an older man named Boone, warned me my first week. He didn't even bother with small talk. He said, "Stay out of Holler Bend." He leaned on his cruiser with one boot propped. "That part of the woods will take your legs out from under you. Don't go past mile marker 37. When I asked him why, he just spat tobacco into the dirt and repeated, "Just don't." That was Ash Creek. No explanations, no stories told straight, only warnings wrapped in silence. I lasted 3 months before I started hearing it myself. It began one November night with a sound outside my cabin window, wet, dragging, slow. It wasn't an animal. Animals scurry or snap branches. This sound was deliberate, like someone pulling themselves forward, inch by inch. Then came the noise, a kind of low moaning whistle, like lungs filled with swamp water. I didn't look out the first night, but the second night it came again. This time, curiosity won. What I saw. There was a shape at the tree line. Moonlight cut across it just enough to reveal its movement, a human form crawling flat as though pressed against the earth. The arms worked, the legs twitched, but the middle of the body sagged, like nothing held it together. It raised its head, or what was left recognizable as a head, and made that awful, shuddering whine before sliding back into the shadows. I didn't sleep after that. By the time I asked around town, people had already stopped meeting my eye. They knew I'd seen them. The hollow ones, they're called. Folks who went into Holler Bend and came back missing more than flesh. The forest takes the bone, the old man from the bar told me when I pressed him again, leaves the rest to crawl. He said no one survives long after they return. Something in them collapses. The body eats itself from the inside, and worse, sometimes they don't all stay near the woods. Sometimes they followed the smell of warmth, of life. That's when he leaned close and whispered, "If one touches you, you'll start to fold too." I wanted to laugh again, but I couldn't, because I remembered the sound that thing made, and I remembered its body sagging, crumpled, like a paper doll with the spine torn out. You probably think I'm a fool. Maybe I am. But things like this get under your skin. They fester. Soon I couldn't stop asking questions, couldn't stop imagining the forest, couldn't stop replaying that wet crawl in my head every night. So I went in. I told myself it was research, that I needed to know, that documenting it, writing it down, photographing it, would make it less surreal. But if I'm honest, I think part of me wanted to prove I wasn't afraid, that the woods didn't own me like it owned everyone else in town. But I was wrong. So damn wrong. I set out one overcast morning in late November, boots caked already in the damp soil. The air carried that sharp, wet smell of moss and iron, like rust bleeding out of tree bark. I told myself I'd only go as far as marker 37. Boone's warning still echoed in my head, but curiosity has a way of gnawing holes through common sense.
But then, the silence hit. No wind, no birds, no crunch of small animals. The stillness was suffocating. And that was when I saw the marker. A leaning green post, paint chipped away, nailed crooked into a dead oak. 37. The border. I don't know why I stepped past it. Maybe because nothing happened right away. Maybe because the woods themselves seemed to draw me in, the trees forming a funnel where the ground dipped in a shallow hollow. That's why they call it Holler Bend, I realized. Because the forest doesn't just stand here, it curves inward, like it's swallowing you. The first real warning was the smell. Sweet, cloying, rotting. Not like an animal carcass, but heavier, more chemical, almost metallic. My stomach turned as soon as I breathed it in. That's when I saw the ground. It wasn't just leaves and dirt. The forest floor sagged in places, little dimples, almost like something heavy had pressed down from above. Drag marks cut through moss leading deeper into the hollow. Crawl marks. I should have turned back. I know that now. But the woods had gone quiet, and I felt this strange pull, like if I just kept going a little further, I'd find an answer, like the truth was dangling just out of sight. I didn't hear it at first. I felt it, the way the air shifted, as though the forest exhaled. Then came that noise, that wet, shuddering whistle I'd heard outside my cabin. It was to my left, 20 feet away, hidden behind a curtain of firs. The shape emerged sideways, dragging itself with jerking hands. A body, thin and gray-skinned with clothes hanging in tatters. Its torso bent unnaturally low, caving where the spine should have been. The flesh sagged there, folding inward. Its head twisted at an angle too sharp for living bone. Eyes milky, jaw slack. And that noise, dear God, that drowning hollow whine that made every nerve in my body scream to run. It didn't notice me at first. I froze, still as a statue. But then its head snapped toward me. Not like something turning, but like fabric tearing. And it smiled. Or maybe that's just how the skin sagged when the jaw tried to move. I bolted. Couldn't think, couldn't breathe, just ran. Branches stabbed my arms. Brambles tore my jeans. My chest hammered like a war drum. I didn't stop until I saw daylight slashing through the trees. I thought I made it out, but when I stumbled into the clearing near my cabin, I realized the crawl marks had followed me. Long tracks carved in the soil, straight to my door. And then I saw the handprint on my porch. Flat, wet, dragging downward. They had already been here. That damp handprint stayed with me, darker than the cedar wood it clung to. I stood there, breath clouding in the cold air, staring at it as if the shape might vanish if I blinked. But it didn't. The ridges were uneven, smeared, warped, as though whatever touched the wood didn't possess the bones to hold proper shape. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my armchair, shotgun across my knees, lights on, every creak of the cabin rattling through my nerves. At 3:17 a.m., I remember the exact time. The floorboards groaned. Not outside, inside. I whipped the barrel toward the kitchen. An empty chair lay toppled, swaying slightly, its legs leaving a groove in the dirt like someone had dragged it. No open doors, no broken windows. The silence after was worse than any sound. When morning finally came, I saw more of the marks, not just on my porch, but across the dirt, lines, smears, impressions of something dragging itself to the cabin and circling. The hollow ones had taken notice. I drove into town that day, shotgun sitting in the passenger seat like a guilty secret. Boone found me first, like he'd been waiting. He leaned against his cruiser in front of the diner, hat low, spit dark tobacco into the gravel and said, "Them marked you." I didn't ask how he knew, he just saw it in my face. "What the hell are they?" I demanded. Boone looked past me toward the forest line, thoughtful the way men get before saying something that tastes wrong to speak out loud. "Them's what's left after the bend gets inside a man or a woman. Ain't about getting lost, ain't about ghosts. It's about your spine." "My spine?" "The woods take it out. Not all at once. First they break it inside you. Fear, madness, dreams. Then when you stumble too deep, they strip it. You keep moving, but you ain't standing no more. You crawl."
"And they follow you?" Boone nodded once, slow. "Because you belong to it now. You ain't one of us anymore. You're part of them. And if you keep staying, they'll collect." He shoved off his cruiser and got back in. Before shutting the door, he told me one last thing. "More you look at 'em, the quicker it takes hold. Stop looking, son." But how could I stop looking when the image of that sagging body was seared into my eyes every time I blinked? That night was the first dream. I found myself crawling through the forest, not walking. My arms dug into mud. My vision hovered unnaturally close to the ground, spine pressing down like molten lead inside me. I heard the whistling, not from one hollow one, but hundreds. The sound surrounded me, drowning my ears. And then I realized the whistling was coming from my throat. I woke screaming on the cabin floor. My sheets were soaked through. My back ached so savagely I could barely stand. In the bathroom mirror, I noticed something terrifying. The arch of my spine seemed lower, hunched, like gravity was working harder on me than it should. By the third day after that dream, the pain became constant. It wasn't the kind of ache you pop aspirin for. It felt like something inside me tugged downward, as though invisible fingers were drawing my spine toward the earth. I went to the town's only clinic, though I knew what Boone would say about it. The doctor, a thin woman with sharp crow's feet, ran her hand carefully along my back and frowned. "Strange curvature," she murmured. "Feels like compression. could be degenerative, but so sudden. She ordered x-rays, but the machine sputtered out, broken since last winter. That's just how Ash Creek is. So I walked out without answers, only that nagging, growing pull on my vertebrae. When I stepped outside, Boone's cruiser was parked across the street. He was watching me. He didn't say a word, just lifted a finger and pointed from me to the woods that loomed beyond town. Then he drove off, gravel spitting under his tires. That night, they came back. Not just one. In the dark yard beyond my cabin, I counted at least 3 of them, crawling, bending, collapsing into themselves and dragging forward, their pale forms lit by the cold silver sheen of moonlight. Their sound rose together into a discordant chorus of wet whistles. My blood froze. Even through the thin glass of my window, I swore I felt it vibrate in my chest cavity. I clutched the shotgun, finger on the trigger, and screamed at myself to shoot. But I couldn't. Because some part of me, God help me, recognized them. Their clothing, torn shirts, jeans, boots. These weren't faceless monsters. They were townsfolk. At least they had been. I recognized one of them by the way his hair hung in stringy tufts, the logger from Jerry's who'd laid down his pool cue that first night. Now he was crawling toward my porch, his face sagging like wet fabric, his spine completely gone. And when he reached the steps, he raised his head and tried to speak. No words came out, only that horrible, desperate whistling. By morning, they were gone again. Only fresh drag marks clawed into the dirt around my cabin. I drove to Boone's office. This time, I didn't wait for him to come to me. I burst in, slamming the door behind me, demanding answers. "You knew this was happening! Why the hell didn't you tell me sooner?" Boone didn't move from behind his desk. For a long time, he just studied me, jaw working on his endless plug of tobacco. Finally, he stood, shut the blinds, slow, deliberate, and leaned close across the desk. "They've taken part of you already," he said. I froze. "That pain in your back? That ain't no slipped disc. That's the bend winding its hooks in you. Once it takes root, there's no off-ramp. You're on the crawl now, son." I felt my legs weaken. My hands went clammy on the edge of his desk. "What do I do?" Boone's eyes darkened. "You run. You get as far from these woods as your tank'll take you. Don't look back. Don't breathe the Ben's air 1 second longer than you have to." "But if it's already inside me?" "Then your only choice," Boone said, "is how long you stay human before the fold takes you." That night, sitting at the window with the shotgun, my back screaming every time I moved, I weighed his words. I could leave, yes. Drive east, forget the cabin, burn the gas until the trees shrank behind me. But would it matter? Could anyone outrun something digging its claws inside their spine? Outside, the forest swayed in a breathless wind. Between the branches, I swore I saw pale forms hanging, waiting, as if the hollow ones knew I was nearly theirs. By dawn, the decision was made. I wouldn't run, not yet. I'd go back into Holler Bend, straight to the center. If the forest wanted me, it would have to finish the job face to face. And maybe, just maybe, I'd learn why it takes the bone. I left at first light. A bitter fog crawled low across Ash Creek, as though the woods bled outward into town. My back screamed each time I twisted the steering wheel, but adrenaline kept me moving. I parked my truck at mile marker 37, engine idling like it wanted to drive without me. The forest loomed ahead, taller than memory, darker somehow. I strapped the shotgun across my shoulder and stepped off the road into the hushed hollow. Every footstep sank into damp soil. Every breath tasted wrong, humid, metallic, like I was swallowing pennies. By the time the marker was long behind me, the silence was complete. No crunch of branches, no croak of frogs, nothing but the faint wobbling whistle of air among trees. That smell returned, thicker than before. Rot and sweetness fused together, coating my tongue. My stomach turned, but I pressed further, because by then I wasn't just looking for survival. I wanted answers. After what felt like an hour crawling deeper, I stumbled into a clearing. The trees curved inward, roots twisting above ground like clutching fingers. At the very center lay a circle of bones, human bones, hundreds of them, pale and brittle, stacked like offerings. Spines, vertebrae piled carefully into spirals, ribs laid flat around them like ribs of some ghastly nest. There were skulls too, but fractured, caved inward, as though stripped for the meat of thought. My knees gave way and bile rose in my throat. I gagged, holding back vomit, but couldn't pull my eyes away. That was when I heard the whistle. Not from behind, not from ahead, but all around me. Figures slipped from between the trees one by one, dragging, folding, collapsing forward on clawing arms, pale, sagging void where their spines should have held them straight. 10, 20, 30 of them. The hollow ones had been waiting. Their forms circled the clearing, pressing me into the graveyard of bones. Their eyes, gray, milky, lifeless, were locked with mine. I realized with sick certainty they weren't watching me out of hunger or rage, they were welcoming me. My spine spasmed, fire shot through my skull. I collapsed to my knees. I dropped the shotgun, my fingers clawed at the dirt, nails splitting. Each breath came like dragging barbed wire down my throat. My body wanted to crawl. And somewhere in the shadows, I realized I was no longer alone. It stood amid the bones, towering, unlike the others. Not collapsed, not sagging, though its spine arched far too long, stretching out in some grotesque curve that swayed unnaturally in the mist. Its head tilted toward me, faceless, featureless, but somehow still watching. And then, it whistled. Louder than all the rest. The others answered, folding into silence, pressing their sagging forms low to the dirt like worshippers bowing to a king. This tall figure wasn't a hollow one. No, this was what made them. The bend itself, given shape. My back arched in agony. My vertebrae felt like they were splitting apart, one by one. I screamed, but no sound came out, only a thin, gasping whistle. The transformation was beginning. The tall figure's whistling rattled the marrow in my bones. My back felt like it was unzipping from the inside out, each joint loosening against my will. I dropped fully to the ground, chest scraping dirt, arms clawing forward like I'd always been meant to crawl. The circle of hollow ones drew closer, their sagging bodies enclosing me like a living cage. Their eyes, gray, milky, lifeless, were locked with mine. I realized with sick certainty they weren't watching me out of hunger or rage, they were welcoming me. My spine cracked at the base. Fire shot up toward my skull. Dimly, I saw one of the hollow ones reach toward me with its broken, twisting hand. Its palm pressed the ground in front of me, showing, teaching me how to go down. I almost gave in, almost let the bend take the last of me, but through the ringing whistle in my skull, another sound cut sharp. Sheriff Boone's voice echoing from memory. More you look at him, the quicker it takes hold. Stop looking, son. I squeezed my eyes shut.
In that instant, something shifted. The fire in my spine didn't vanish, but it steadied, dulled, as though starved of fuel. The whistling chorus sputtered, and when I opened my eyes, the tall figure had stepped back, towering frame swaying, almost curious.
I scrambled to my feet, pain screaming, but upright still. Upright. Against every weight dragging me down, I forced myself to stand. The hollow ones recoiled, their bodies shuddered, as if the sight of someone refusing to crawl broke their rhythm. Even the tall figure didn't stop me as I stumbled backward through the clearing, shotgun hanging forgotten at my side. I didn't breathe again until the marker faded back into view. 3 nights have passed since Holler Bend let me leave. The pain in my back hasn't stopped. Some mornings I can't stand straight at all, and I see my silhouette, hunched, folded, cast long on my cabin floor. I know the bend is still inside me. It will claim me sooner or later. But until then, I write this down. Let anyone who finds these words know what waits in those woods. Maybe you'll be smart enough not to go looking. And if you hear the whistling outside your window at night, don't you dare.